couple of years ago, we had a session here with Timmy, and he explained to us about the Hamoku system. And when he was talking about it, I actually started to visualize the system in my mind. It just gave me the idea. I thought, oh, wow, that would be a beautiful painting. And I was thinking, I think I could do it. From that moment on, it stayed in my mind as a possibility. And when we talked about doing the reaching out, that's what came first to my mind, is to ask him if I could depict the Aomoku system. My first approach was to talk to his mother, Gordine Bellet, who is my kumu as well, and she helped me in the process of getting us together and communicate to do the piece.
And I'm born and raised here, the island of Maui, in the Moku of Kula, the Ahupua'a of Alai. Born and raised as a farmer, and I've been involved with the Ahamoku system ever since I was turned on to it by the late John Ka'i Makawao, who was a kumuhula in Molokai, and he had shared the prophecy at a Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council meeting. And like Joelle, I got inspired to see how it related to the job that I do, to my life, to my family, and learn more about it and realize that it was really such a simple system that helped our people out in the ancient times, and embraced it and kind of applied it to everyday's life, including my job up at Haleakala. And it kind of went from there, and next thing I know, I was giving talks and kind of explaining what the Ahamoku system was all about. You look at the piece kind of explains it all, really. I give a PowerPoint presentation. I've given many presentations in Washington, D.C., Oahu, school groups, you name it. And when I was asked to give a talk here at the Viewpoints Gallery, she got inspired and off of my presentation, and through her vision and us working together, it really just explains the process of people management, really, in the ancient times. Because the Ahamoku system was based on the ahakioli, the baby fish. When our kahuna and our spiritual leaders looked into the ocean and saw that this abundance of baby fish in the muliwai and the mixing of the fresh water and ocean water, they looked on the land and saw that our people were almost as abundant as this fish, and there was no system of management. So it was just basically chaotic. And they decided to gather the experts, which is the aha, or also represents a cordage, a certain cordage. So to explain that cordage, as it was explained to me by the late John Ka'i Makawao, everybody's an expert. So if you're a fisherman or a farmer or a medicinal, la'alapa'ao, any of these people that had the knowledge would come together at a council meeting and present like an aho, a cord. And when you got these experts and you wove it together in a certain fashion, those experts decided to create the Ahamoku system, which basically divided our land, our oceans, our sky, our lani, everything into a managed system. And for example, on the island of Maui, we have 12 moku, hence the aha and then the moku land divisions. And they decided to divide the Ahamoku into 12 on Maui, primarily because the resources in each moku was common. There was always something to do with the ocean. There was always something to do with the vai, the water. There was always something to do with the lani, the sky, the air, and then the aina. And then, of course, the burials of our kupuna. So when they divided these 12 moku up, they made sure that all 4 of those commonalities, or 5 of those commonalities, were present in each moku. And the 12 that we have on Maui, 9 of them are on the East Maui end, and 3 of them are on the West Maui end, which gives us 12. But what's really interesting about the Ahamoku on Maui, which is different than a lot of the other islands' moku system, is that Maui represents kind of a woman's body with the head and the body of a person. Primarily the women, because the women are the ones that determine the bloodline, determine the reproductive stages, all these things. So long story short, with West Maui being the head, with the Pu'ukukui being the center of those three moku there, Ka'anapali, Lahaina, and Puali Komohana, known as Wailuku. And then on this end, east end, we have the belly button, or the piko, known as Pohaku Palaha, up at Haleakala, and it houses 8 out of the 9 moku. And the 9 moku on the east end are Hamaku Apoko, Hamaku Aloa, Ko'olau, Hana, Kipuhulu, Kaupo, Kahiki Nui, Honua Ula, and then the biggest one known as Kula. So basically the system was a way of managing our people based on the natural resources, because the natural resources had to be a priority in order for us to live.
Based on that information, I started to do my own research. It's not written anywhere, and it's actually knowledge that's getting lost. So of course, it made me want to do it even more. With what he shared with me, it was a really good base to start working. I was a little bit concerned, and I had questioning to myself, or am I supposed to do this, not being Hawaiian. So I asked, which I do once in a while, I ask for a sign, am I supposed to do this? And on the same day, I had 2 events. One of them was to meet by chance with one of my Hawaiian friends, David Heva, who gave me some information that clarified some of the questions I had. But the main sign was that I had a dream, and the dream was that, I told you this, right? It was that I was in maybe a train station or airport, and I was waiting online, and a guard came to me and asked for my papers, and he asked me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to the Aomoku system." And he said, "Okay, you can go." So that was a sign for me that maybe I was supposed to do this. And I shared it with Timmy, who immediately responded and said, "Okay, let's really try to find a time together." And we did. And I was very encouraged by the fact that when I presented to him my sketches, right away he responded very well to it.
When she brought the sketch out and I saw the sketch, I was immediately floored and impressed that the message I was sharing was absorbed. And it's no different than the speeches and the talks that I've given, and other people have gone out and maybe regurgitated some things that were said. But in this case, she's expressing the knowledge that she viewed from the Ahamoku system in an art form. And when I saw that in her design, I was immediately impressed and said, "Yeah, well, I think we got it covered." And then we kept working on some fine details, including the colors involved to make the natural colors of the world as we see it through our eyes. How we as Native people are natural, or nature in itself. A lot of times in today's world, we forget that we're nature and we were nature. But Native cultures worldwide respond to that because our language, our songs, our dance, our culture is based on natural resources. So it's the pohaku, the rocks, that give us the ability to carve our pohaku ki'i, to tell the stories of our generations that we come from. The game of papakonani that we play, to mindset of our strategy, the natural fibers to make the aha. Everything was just kind of depicted in her sketch, and we just went more and more from there. And I mean, I could share this. One thing I was kind of opposed of is I don't like to be in the forefront of things, but her and my mom was there, and they're pretty adamant about getting me in the final piece.
I was happy that I made the choice of depicting Timmy, because I felt when I was doing the painting, it was kind of a meeting place between the Hawaiian culture and Timmy embodying that culture. And you know, he explained to me about his tattoos, and I could actually include them into the system. So it was amazing how every one of his tattoos actually were able to fit into the landscape. As I was creating the piece, I was feeling that it was a meeting place between, you know, the story and the knowledge that had been passed on through generations.
And people will say that it can be offensive to include personal bodywork or kakao or tattooing in photos or paintings. But the way I look at it, Joelle, is I'm just wearing the pride of my ancestors. I didn't create these designs. It's from the ancients. It's from the ahamoku system itself. So it's an honor for me to even be able to have the koko in me and wear it. But what's really interesting is the Native Hawaiian tattoo designs. And I got to credit my kakao kani, or a tattoo man, Samson Harp. He and I had a big connection from day one when we met. But this pattern right here represents the nene. And it's not the nene walking, it's the nene's flight pattern. If you ever watch geese fly, they fly in a triangular pattern. And that's what it represents. And the fact that I chose the nene pattern is because, like the nene, they could fly and go somewhere else. But as a Kanaka, I chose to be here just like the nene. And they thrive here, they're endemic, they're part of the landscape. And because it's nature, it gives us our ability to represent something, and we move forward. And as you know, the ahamoku system is kind of in land divisions, not like how we look on a map with lines, but by place names, which is really important to have place names. But when I saw her sketch and see how it's proportioned like this, you can look at them in quadrants. So you can look at these four, those four, and that four as a quadrant. And you can look at this as a center, and this being a cross. Well, you have the representation of our four major gods. We have Kanaloa depicted, of the ocean and the mana, and everything from the Aikai, which is where the food source is on the shoreline, to the Lipo, to where the voyaging and the depths of the ocean are. And as you go up to the next quadrant, you have, this is Kani, the waters of Kani. So Kani also represents west side. So you have Kanaloa, you have Kani, the waters of Kani, and then we move over. So Ku, and you actually have Kualono. So you have Ku, Lono, Kanaloa, and Kani, the four gods, and it's in a quadrant. And that also depicts the ahamoku system in itself. So each one of these gods have certain powers or certain roles. As we know, we're in the makahiki time for Lono right now, yeah. And then we'll go into Kanaloa. It was basically the ocean, and he holds all the mana. Kani, the waters of Kani. But the interesting thing about Kani is he also is the keeper of law during sunset. So during the day we're in Ao, the light, and as the sun goes down, then we go into Po, the dark. And Kani is actually kind of responsible for making sure that law is kept during the Po until he comes up into Ao again. And then Ku is of life, and also Ku, as we look at it and our balance of ourselves, as depicted in the circle of life here. You have your Kani, and you have your Vahine, your men and your women. And it's interesting because there's actually 12 in here of each, and there's 12 moku. So when she put that in a draft, I said that was fitting. I don't know if she meant it that way. And when we talked about it, it just kind of happened that way. But what's really important is your Ku and your Hina. So you have your Ku and your Hina, which is your balance. Your left side is your Hina, your Ku is your right side, your male side. And when Ku was brought to the islands after travels in the early, I don't like to give a date or timelines, but when it was brought, then that was when the equality of women during the time prior to the ahamoku was lessened. That's when women had kapus on certain foods, certain fish. So Ku played a major role in that as well. And then, as you know, Lono is when we're fruitful and we're harvesting and we're able to reap the benefits of an abundance of a good wet season like we have. As Kanaka today and the Kuleana we have today, we have to put something higher than ourselves. And if we can't put nature higher than ourselves, then we have to look at other ways. So we have spiritual ways of having something higher than ourselves. But not everybody believes in the same spiritual things. For some of us, especially our men, our Hawaiian men in today, we need to put like our wives and our children higher than ourselves too. But when it comes to nature and amongst everybody, nature has to be at its highest. And that's what the Ahamoku system was created, because if we had chaos and we didn't have balance and we didn't have management and we didn't have these experts who made canoes telling you what trees to cut and what not to cut and when to cut, when we didn't have fishermen that tells you when to fish and you can't fish and put restrictions, when we didn't have abundance of water coming through the lo'i and when you didn't have that management concept of nature, because nature cannot be reproduced by man, I think that this work that Joelle has done has captured the Ahamoku system and the meaning behind it, that it's all about the resources that we can't duplicate. And it's the connection of spirituality, and then the fact that we as Kanaka people are able to use these natural resources to provide what we need spiritually, what we need as tools, and what we need as food. So I think it depicts the Ahamoku system well.
The challenge for me was that, to pass on a knowledge that I didn't feel totally I had, because I've lived here for 34 years, and when I started to talk with Timmy and research a little bit, I realized that I knew so little about the Hawaiian culture. And it was very humbling and at the same time very enlightening to work on this. But I had, of course, insecurities about it, because I was thinking, I don't know enough, to give it justice. So I was pleased to see that Timmy responded quite well to what I was doing.
I think one thing that's really important is no matter what Kanaka comes forward and looks at this, they can have their own viewpoint and their own mo'olelo, their own story, their own connection to their family genealogy. When they look at this, it's not just one person's viewpoint. That's the beauty of the way it's showcased, is anybody can come here and see something that they'll be tied into, or a part of that expertise that they can bring, which connects the aha. Everybody can bring an alo to this, and they'll be connected into the aha, which is the whole concept of that prophecy that was shared.
As an artist myself, some of the challenge was to express both the abstract and the realism in one painting, which is actually part of the culture. And I would say the abstract, the spiritual, and the reality, all in one painting. And that's what Timmy expressed in, when he was kind of teaching me. And to put that in one painting was really a challenge. But I felt that it took me all my life as an artist to be able to express that.